Welcome everyone to day 4 of Privacy Week 2023. Today I am joined by Jonathan Sharrock, who is the founder, CEO of Cyber Citadel, which is a New Zealand headquartered cybersecurity company, but with global operations. I've worked with Jonathan on a number of engagements where we've required assistance post-breach to conduct an assessment of the damage that's been incurred and basically what my clients need to do to further secure their systems to get back to business as usual. So I wanted to have a cybersecurity view on privacy. So thank you, Jonathan, for your time and welcome today. And perhaps if we get the ball rolling by you introducing yourself.
Yeah, so welcome everybody. So my name's Jonathan Sharrock. I started Cyber Citadel but way back in 2018 with the intention of being, I was getting involved in a lot of security projects when I came back to New Zealand back in 2015, spent a lot of time overseas. I realized I had some good contacts and some good intentions, and I thought, well, I think it's about time I tried to make an impression on the New Zealand market. So started off in Wellington, moved myself further north, and here I am in Auckland with a wife and 2 kids, and I'm really enjoying the cybersecurity market in New Zealand. We do stuff in Australia as well, and in the UK and Europe. And my calls this morning started off in Chicago and ended up in London. So I tend to get up at 4:30 in the morning, but I'm sort of done by about 9:30 at night. So yeah, but I'm at that stage where I just really enjoy the whole market, the community, the people, the support, being across all the topics. It's fast moving, it's changing, it's exciting, and here we are with Privacy Week, and it's there's a whole lot of good stuff happening, and there's stuff all in the news and all headline news. So yeah, I'm looking forward to discussing some of the topics.
Thanks, Jonathan. And you made the point there about how excited you were, and you work with many other companies and stuff. I would also endorse that. Working in the cybersecurity space, while we are sort of competing companies in a way, it's the victims that we're concerned about. It's what they go through. It's the crisis management, and it's basically about gathering a team together to help people get through the situation that they find themselves in. I guess what we'd like to try and impart on people though is prevention, but you can't entirely prevent a cyber attack. I think it's fair to say most people acknowledge that a breach can occur. But if I'm to kick off the questions and say, acknowledging that you can't completely avoid being victim of a cyber attack, what are your thoughts on what organizations should be doing from a 101 for privacy and from a cybersecurity point of view?
Yeah, look, obviously, one of the things that we notice is the real simple things around privacy. And if you look at all the kind of latest breaches and attacks and all the stuff that's been leaked into the dark web and even the public internet, one of the things that we encourage our customers and clients, and we try and arrange. There's a whole lot of things you can do, but one of the key things is don't keep data that you don't need to do your job. If you don't need to keep the data, delete it. We even encourage our company. We actually have a data deletion day where people actually go in and just delete stuff. And we've got certain controls in place where we're looking for stuff that we shouldn't really keep. Once you've deleted something, and you're not keeping stuff that you don't need, it makes a big difference. I also think that, especially with privacy, there's a lot of stuff that organizations don't realize, that things like something just as simple as something like encryption, it makes a big difference. That if you lose something, if you lose for example, you're out and about in, say, Wellington, and you lose a laptop, if it's encrypted, then it's less of a problem, providing the key management parts, dealt with correctly. Whereas something's unencrypted, then, you don't know what's going to happen, and you've got certain things that you need to do to report that the data's been leaked and everything else. Obviously we do a lot of security testing, and we have a a security operations center, a SOC. So we're always encouraging people to let us find the flaws before the bad guys do. So we test your applications. We do, for example, Latitude. In their scenario, we would basically go and run through a whole lot of test scenarios and find flaws and report them to the organization before the breach potentially could happen. Because we know there's misconfigurations, we know there's staff attrition, we know there's people that there might be, even in some cases, there's been companies where there's an internal person that's working against the organization that could be a malicious employee, disgruntled employee, somebody that gets phished, confidence, someone feels pretty confident that dealing with somebody, but they've actually been coerced into handing over something that they potentially shouldn't have access to. So from my side of things, we know that you can never actually be 100% secure, but you can try and get as close to that as possible. And also security, it might sound like a cliche, but it is a layered approach. If someone's trying to get into your systems, having another layer, another chamber of protection, the security onion approach where you've got layers and layers and layers, it makes things more difficult.
I like the Get Smart movie where Maxwell Smart's
Yes,
all the doors.
yes, yeah,
exactly
yeah,
that.
exactly.
Talking about data and data retention, data deletion. So the Office of the Privacy Commissioner has come out this week, saying you shouldn't be holding on to information about a purchase that was made 15 years ago.
Yes.
In my view, and I'm sure everyone agrees, data is kind of invisible. It's not like you got paper, bankers boxes, and foolscap folders. So if someone's sitting there right now today listening to this, or in future when they watch the video, and they say to themselves, well, I don't see a data problem. No one's screaming out. What would be the first step someone should do to try and work out how much data they've got and what sort of data they've got?
I think one of the best things that you can do is just map out the environment, map out what you've actually got. So one of the first things I would suggest anyone does is actually go. You have to find out what data you actually own and what you have, and then doing things like data classification. Actually finding out what's important, that what shouldn't be leaked, and protecting that data. So encrypting it at rest. Even communicating with other people, are you using systems that are secure? And we've even seen systems that are secure being, popped and having problems. But having the right, for example, we keep copies of stuff if a client asks us to. So when we hand over a report, we may keep a copy of it only if they've asked us to help them with the retesting or if there's any questions. Otherwise, we actually have to ask for the report back. We don't own it at that point. So from our side of things, we get rid of it. We don't want to have the ownership of it. But it's also, we need to find out what data do we already have and what data is already out there. So, and there's also a step beyond that is if you are worried about, has anything or any breach or anything actually happened in the past that you should be concerned about, as Campbell knows and when we do it all the time, is get access to a tool that will actually look through the dark web and find out, what is your risk exposure? What have you seen? What are the bad guys? What do they have access to? And also have the ability to be notified. So look at there's a law firm breach in Australia, the Ebsworth breach. Now, right now that they've been told that things are under control, but what happens when potentially the data gets leaked? At some point you'd like to be notified. So having a relationship with a company that can actually say, okay, we can keep a lookout in the dark web for any activity that's related to your organization, whether it's an email address, a list of all the senior leadership team. You could have 25 different key things that you could be on the lookout for that could be reported to you the second it became available. And as a good example of that is if I look back, so we've got a tool that we use. You can see things like the Thai Airway breach. That was last year in April. Someone was trying to sell that data, and nothing happened. No one was interested in it. Yet months later, the breach is announced. Now that was for sale for some time. Tools like Campbell and I that we have will tell you that someone's trying to sell that data, and you can do something about it. Having the visibility is key. Being able to see stuff that is ahead of the news with someone on Twitter or someone sending you an email saying, hey, I know this, that's embarrassing. Being ahead of it, you've got the first 24 hours, it makes all the difference having the data.
Mm. We often talk about cyber from the point of view of the attackers, the bad guys. I just want to switch and tap into your good knowledge here, Jonathan, of inadvertent data breaches and something that might seem quite innocent. So a number of years ago when I was working on certain jobs, I saw a proliferation of people sending things to Hotmail and Gmail addresses, and they were business emails. And what I'd advise my client is you do know that when you send emails to those accounts, that essentially those vendors take ownership of anything that's inside of them. More recently, there's been a big increase in GPT, large language models, and so on and so forth. And there's a lot of people currently copying company information into a GPT to then spit it out to me in a different format. Obviously, those companies take ownership of that information. There's now lawsuits coming out from GitHub. What would you say as a security expert about companies putting their confidential information up into a GPT?
I'm glad you asked that question, actually. Now, I was just thinking about that this morning, actually. So Samsung's, they've got the chip manufacturers and some other people have actually been testing out various bits of code and having things rewritten. So look, it is a great world when you can get like Stack Overflow and all these big, massive information websites that they can ingest all that data and they can improve your code. You can take something really simple, put it into say Chat GPT, and it might spit out a version that may look better than what you've managed to put together. But it is a pre-trained system, the P in the GPT. So they want your data, and the more data they can get, that's why the big companies like Google and Microsoft and companies that have got huge, massive amounts of data can train very effectively these models, but they are scooping up as much as they possibly can for their benefit. They're not giving you anything back apart from a bit of an easier day. But at some point, you'll sit back and you go, that was really easy. I can go to lunch now because my job's done. But you've just released a whole lot of stuff that could be, you don't know what's inside that code, right? There could be some API keys, there could be some S3 buckets, there could be a whole lot of stuff that's been leaked. And the bad guys are trawling for that information, right? They are on the lookout for it. So you don't know what's next, and you're losing the ability to be in control of your data. So it's not like it's on your system and you've got it all locked down and you've got a full audit trail. It's going off into the ether for the benefit of something that may or may not, you never know if that's going to be breached or it's going to behave a certain way or work against you. What say the bad guys start using the AI, because they are, but what say they start using stuff where it can start making some smart decisions on the fact that you've just revealed too much information as an organization. So anything from an intellectual property point of view, if you're rewriting a CV or if you're doing a wedding letter, then I think that's fine. If you're taking anything that I would consider to be customer or your organization's intellectual property, you need to be able to redact it or just ask the question in such a way that you can run a view in parallel without revealing too much about anything that would be any use to the model.
What should people be doing right now? Should they be blocking these sites from work access? Should they be writing policies? Should they be training their staff on the dangers and how to use them?
Yeah, so training for sure. Making pure awareness is the first part of it. Showing the impact of someone doing something. Actually showing the fact that when someone sees someone being breached and all the kind of hardships and all the stuff that went through, that sort of hits home. Showing somebody the fact that these organizations need your data, and but having an organizational policy saying that this is how it can be used if you allow access. Having a policy to say if it's used this way, then that is a breach of company policy, and maybe providing an alternative that is under your control is a better longer term view. I'm hoping to see versions of the Chat GPT and all those other systems where company wide. Now, look, give you an example. We've only just signed up for it last week, so I can't really talk too much about it. But look at things like Microsoft Loop. That's got that could potentially go through every one of my proposals if I wanted it to. Nothing. There's no redacted or client confidential information. I can give it generic versions of all my proposals and say, hey, can you put together a black box proposal with these systems in mind and using this methodology and this. It could basically build a nice proposal for me based on information I don't mind being public.
Mhm.
Now, it saves me a lot of time. It gives me something that's probably 90% of what I want. It gives me a faster turnaround. It gives me another set of eyes. I think ChatGPT used from a threat hunting point of view and remediation point of view, we already use a tool that has ChatGPT in it. We can't ask it questions, but it gives us a ChatGPT response. It asks the question. See what I
Yep.
mean? It controls it, but it uses ChatGPT to fix my problem, and it displays the answer to me on the screen. I didn't have to reveal anything. I didn't make the mistake of giving it something that I shouldn't have. The system's using it because it knows how to use it, if that makes sense.
Mm. So expanding the concept of cloud computing and using these free tools, and we go back to software development. So GitHub,
Hmm.
if you're using the free version, again, there's a trade-off. They offer
Hmm.
you a free solution to put your software code in, and
Hmm.
you check it in, and then GitHub can basically take ownership of that information. And
Hmm.
then if someone's asks ChatGPT to run a script for them, out pops a script using stuff that's been scraped from GitHub, for example.
Hmm. Hmm.
So you can see sort of a in the near future there'll be a lot more lawsuits than just GitHub and so on and so forth. But say again, from a practical security perspective and privacy, if an organization wanted to know what are their staff accessing, is it just a matter of looking at the old internet proxy logs, or do they need something a bit better these days around cloud brokerage?
Yeah, they need to be able to. They need the visibility. They need to see what's been communicated, what's been sent up. We looked at things like shadow IT and things like that. And that basically gave you some sort of control because you could say, I think this is acceptable, but this isn't. And having some sort of control over how it can be used and how it can be how it can benefit the organization. I think. Look, I wouldn't want to get in I wouldn't want to get in the way of progress, but I think you fully need to understand. It's back to what you said originally. Is from a training perspective, the staff need to be aware of the risks of using that type of public free system. It's a bit like some organisations just don't allow Dropbox, the free version of Dropbox for that very reason. You don't own your files. You can encrypt stuff and you can do all sorts of good stuff, but you need to be very careful on how you use it. So I would say, while it's a bit like the Wild West at the moment, where everyone's just seeing it's doing their job for them, I wouldn't let it make decisions for you. I mean, that's not what it's designed for. But also, I would be very careful that you've got to realize that this system is being trained all the time. And it's not like it's a car driving down the road and it's trying to recognize different objects. It's your company's intellectual property that's being made public, and you've got no way of. This is why when you look at um, like some of the like stockbroking applications, and why do cars go a certain way with AI and stuff like that, they can't actually go back and audit how they got there. So it's a bit of a black hole. So it's very
Mm.
hard for you to say that, well, that happened, and there's gonna be more lawsuits. I think being preventative and understanding the risk back to training, finding out, if you want to use it in this way. Otherwise, you know, don't use it all.
So if you're going to put your data up on one of these cloud sites unencrypted, you may as well just put it on a USB key and leave it on a bus.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So taking the cloud conversation and expanding that into supply chain, cloud is obviously part of organization supply chain. When you and I catch up sort of every 2-3 months, we're talking about what the trends are right now. It's
Hmm.
definitely supply chain. That
Hmm.
is the flavor of the month, both from security companies and government. So the UK National Cybersecurity Centre put out some really, really useful guidance on how do companies manage their cloud service providers' security. And there's good tick lists in place. Um, Again, from your point of view, the starting point, organizations that perhaps haven't done a supply chain audit, and know exactly where all their data is held, what's a good starting point?
Doing discovery. So find out where everything is. Like our company does that for you. Just find out. There'll be tentacles all over the place. Find out where the data's going to and from, and also making sure from a software supply chain point of view is understanding that there are known bad sites, risky sites. There are things that look convincing, that look like the real thing and they're not. Having some system in place that can actually tell you that that site has a bad reputation and actually doesn't allow you to connect to it. This could be a domain name system, a DNS type of system that will not resolve bad IP addresses. And I think being understanding, having the visibility and actually seeing where all the data flows and everything else is, I think that's important. And if you there are tools that will go out there. We use a tool. We released a video this morning on a tool that gives us complete visibility over all the assets in the cloud. And that tool gives us the ability to. It does a thing called side scanning, where it just takes a snapshot of the virtual machine and it maps it out and gives you some visibility on that. It's from a company called Orca, but at the end of the day, it's quite clever how it does that. And then it shows you everything on the screen, because a lot of the time you don't know. It looks like a black hole, and it actually gives you the ability to see stuff. I think that's the first part. So, because you don't really know, if you can't see it, then it's really hard to do something about it. So I would say mapping it out and understanding the risks. In some of these organizations, there are systems that will give you a score, overall score with the person you're dealing with, finding out if they've got a poor reputation. And once again, back to this dark web monitoring thing that we spoke about earlier, all that data helps.
So once you've conducted an assessment and you share that with the client and they now know where all their data points are, and you provide some recommendations around how they should further secure it, what I see as a risk is if the organization doesn't address that, and perhaps it goes on for 6 months or a year, just like companies that perhaps don't patch their systems regularly as well. If there was to be a breach later on, and that came out as part of a litigation, for example, what are your recommendations to everyone who undertakes security assessments, and talk about the critical and high and the need to address those?
Yeah, so back to the security. So we do a lot of penetration testing, and we do some some vulnerability assessments, mostly penetration testing. We follow the kind of the US government sort of best practice standards. I think they're saying within 15 days your critical should be addressed, should be fixed. We should be coming in and retesting that to make sure that that the actual critical finding has been addressed. Some companies will put it in as an organization. They will say, if you report a critical to us, the team has 14 days to fix it, and that's a KPI against that. And some companies will get rid of people that have the wrong attitude in those situations. It's quite important that that's enforced. So it's 15 days. 14 days is a lot of the time. And then obviously there are some situations where the organization may push back and say, so we found a Safari vulnerability with Apple, and we gave them the responsible disclosure, but they were saying that they had another release coming out later on and they'll just fix it later on. Well, it's really up to you at that point. You can say, look, we'll release it. You've had enough time, which we did, and obviously we don't get the bug bounty for that. But also you've got to be pretty strict. There are some things that you can accept because you've got another release coming out that will take care of it. Sometimes it's just down to cost. People just don't want to do anything, and also it's hard for me to say this, but some people don't want to know about these problems because then they'll need to fix them. And it's about having some sort of maturity inside the organization to know that when we do security testing, it's not about a pass or fail engagement. It's about Cyber Citadel and incident response coming in and improving your security as an organization, and making sure that you get them the right help and support to make sure it's better. That's why, for example, sometimes it's just very hard to recreate are critical, because your team just doesn't know how to do that. So we provide like a little video, a little screencast showing us doing it. So that helps. But it is the case. Don't sit on it. You need to get it fixed and retest
So
it.
what if a company has one of those apps and it's gone end of life? You've identified it as critical, and they go back to the vendor, and the vendor says, "We're just not updating it anymore. You've got to update to a new version." So I guess public example of that was the file transfer that was used by a government agency. They were
Yep.
on an old version. They didn't update when they could have updated. It ended up in probably millions of dollars of costs. What do? Do you just tell the client you have to stop using it? It's high risk, and you have to decide to use a new platform.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're referring to there. And unfortunately, yeah, it's how well is that communicated also to people that understand the risk properly? Because there was a risk there that they probably decided to. It's far for me to say what their internal decisions were, but look, I know from hospitals and MRI machines, when you're spending $15 million, you want to get as much money out of that system as possible. And when you've been told that you've got to buy another one to run Windows 10, and the other one that runs Windows XP, and it still hasn't made you enough money to pay it off, and you've still got the big loan repayments, people's motivation can be a little bit skewed. So it's got to be met with some sort of balance, and sometimes it is sitting on something like you say, the file, the system that's been end of life. This back to the software supply chain. It's part of your roadmap. It's part of your investment. It's part of your understanding of that product has a life that's going to be supported. Even your iPhone, that my iPhone here, I know that they're probably still supporting up to iPhone 6 or whatever. But if I've got an iPhone 5 in a drawer here, that's not getting any more security updates, and I've got to understand that, and I'm taking the risk at that point of view. But the problem is this is why we're here, is it's the customer or the person behind that's affected by it. And it's the fact that things like with Latitude and stuff like that is you just believe as an organization they're doing the right thing, and no one's checking on them. They should be getting. As soon as you get a breach, the first thing that the cyber insurance and the investigator asks you is, show me your last security testing. Show me the last pen test that you did. And if you're sitting there going like, yeah, and it's like it's just not up to scratch, not only is it embarrassing for them, is you're in hot water. And I think that some of these organizations need to let's say they need to understand the fact that the bad guys have got access to some, and I know that because we look at the tools every day. The bad guys are using AI. They've got access to some amazing tools. They've even rewritten one of the systems that in Rust. The Chinese have written some system in this thing called Rust, which is just fantastic with memory, the way it handles memory. They've written a whole new version to be used by the bad guys. So there's a lot more sophistication out there. So I think understanding your software supply chain, understanding when something's end of life, preparing for it, not sweating your assets because it's just easy to do. But at some point, it's got to be built into this thing needs to be sunset on this date because of the support you're going to get. And I think even Androids, even Google with Android, they've had to step in and say, look, we will help the whole upgrade process because the hardware vendors were just trying to make as much money as possible and move on.
Yep, the bad guys are winning. Totally agree. And when COVID came along, because a lot of the criminals couldn't do their traditional drug running, money laundering, selling watches in various countries around the world, a lot of them turned to cybercrime, and we saw that spike, and it just went through the roof. It goes up and down like it does always. You hear about ransomware in certain months, and then it will die away, and then you hear about email compromise. But the reality is they're making a lot of money. It's now worth more than the global drug trade. It's taken over that, and it will continue to be there. Jonathan, you've shared a lot of useful insights. Just mindful of the time. Do you have any sort of closing pearls of wisdom you'd like to share with the attendees?
Obviously, we've got a security operations center, SOC. We're seeing a lot of stuff coming through. I do think that there's a lot you can do to be sort of stay ahead of the bad guys, and I think having some sort of security monitoring, having these dark web capable tools, getting some visibility over your data, and asking some questions that Just because somebody told you that they've got it covered or it's been done, just validate, get it checked, because someone might have implemented something the wrong way. They might have accidentally set it up something. Have it peer reviewed, or just have something checked. Don't just assume. They always say trust but verify. And if something comes out of the blue and someone asks you to do something, or something that you didn't plan that day, or something was just unexpected, chances are it's not going to be a good thing. So that's it.
Perfect. Really appreciate all that. I'm sure I speak on behalf of everyone who's attended today and everyone that will look at this video in future, that it's useful, timely information. There's always more that can be done. It's Privacy Week, so we're trying to promote privacy as a topic. Cyber's an important part of that. So, Jonathan, thank you very much for your time today. And I'll just remind everyone that we've got our last speaker tomorrow, Neil Green from Senate SHJ, who's the founding partner, and they deal with crisis management, public relations. So if it was all to happen and you find yourself in that unfortunate situation, what can you do to prepare yourself for being the spotlight on the front page of the paper, and how do you best get through it? How do you manage your reputation and return to business as usual? So enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much. See you later.
Thank you, everybody.